Now, three continents are in the grip of heat waves. The sweltering conditions are causing misery for hundreds of millions in Europe, Asia and North America. In the United States, there is record-breaking heat in the south and poor air quality across a huge swathe of the nation because of smoke from wildfires in Canada. The weather is extreme and the scientists are clear. Man-made climate change is principally behind this. Well, President Joe Biden, who is a Democrat, has made tackling climate change one of his top policy priorities. Republican Party politicians are still grappling with how to talk about the issue. Former President Donald Trump, who's running to be president again, is a climate skeptic. Well, I've been talking to some Republicans who are trying to overhaul their party's position. Former Congressman Bob Inglis runs RepublicEn, which tries to convince American conservatives to come to grips with climate change, and Benji, a young conservative who founded the American Conservation Coalition. Here's Bob Inglis first.
It's pretty clear that something's up, isn't it? And I think that's something that's helping us as we look for solutions, is people realize we've clearly got a problem. The question is, what's the solution? That's the question that's current.
Benji, do you agree with Bob Inglis that people are clear that climate change is real, it is man-made, and that something has to be done?
I think that the American populace, and especially younger Americans, are very clear that this is largely in part due to climate change, and climate change is exacerbating what would be a normal heat wave, and it's making that heat wave a lot worse. I'm not sure the politicians in this country are fully on board, especially on the right. That's something that we're trying to change. But I think that there is some debate still, and I think that's part of the problem and why Bob and I's work is so important.
Yeah, Bob Inglis, the man who is likely to be the Republican Party candidate for president next year, Donald Trump, continues to say in speeches and in interviews phrases that get him criticised by climate campaigners. Ron DeSantis, the next favoured person to be candidate, had also recently talked about the politicisation of the weather, said that global warming was left-wing stuff.
Yeah, they're clearly playing to a base that they think is going to carry them through the primaries, of course. But the interesting thing is that, particularly in the case of Donald Trump, he's got a very short time horizon. He wants to win just one more election. Meanwhile, if you talk to longer time horizon Republicans, people that plan to run for years to come, is for the House or the Senate, they typically see the demographic data of people Benji's age coming their way, and they want to be responsive to young conservatives, but they're afraid of that guy who wants to win just one more election. And so that's really where the Republican Party is stuck right now.
Benji, there was a recent Pew poll which found that 1 in 4 Republicans, 23%, considered climate change a major threat, suggesting that 3/4 don't consider it to be a major threat. So how do you, as a young person who does believe that the changing climate is a big threat, not just to the planet's environment, but also to the United States environment, how do you persuade those people that you're right and they're wrong?
Well, first, I think it's talking through the issues that they have with the current narrative. Conservative voters do have some issues with the narrative, and by proxy don't believe in climate change because of that. And they don't like the Green New Deal. They don't like government mandates. They don't like the government trying to come and tell them what energy sources to use or not use, especially if their jobs or livelihoods depend on the energy source that they're being told to shut down. So it's kind of alleviating those concerns and saying that there's a different approach, and that different approach is good for the economy, that it's good for national security, that it's good for community development and rural development, and also protecting clean air and clean water and public health. When you present conservatives who don't believe in climate change, so don't believe in the science, with a conservative alternative on the issue, their belief in climate change skyrockets just because they've heard of something that they actually can apply to their own values. And when you give something a solution to people who don't feel like there's one for their own values, they're going to be more likely to believe in that issue. So it's not just not believing in the science, it's being scared of liberal solutions and that being the only option. We have to provide others.
Well, Bob Inglis, you have advocated for a very long time a tax on carbon. To an awful lot of Republican voters, that might sound like a liberal solution.
Yeah, until they hear that first we untax some form of income. How about payroll taxes? We reduce those first and then put on the carbon tax, so that it's actually sort of an untax of income and a tax of pollution instead. And it's when presented that way, I think people can start to buy into it.
Bob Inglis, do you think the current extreme weather, which is affecting many tens of millions of Americans, is perhaps changing some minds on the issue of climate change among Republicans?
I think it's got to. Experience is an effective teacher, often a harsh teacher, but it's most often very effective teacher. So we're being taught about climate change. It's in the smoke in the air. It's in the heat. It's in the sea level rise. It's really changed. When back when I was getting tossed out of Congress for saying that climate change was real in the midst of the Great Recession, there's aggressive unbelief about climate change. It's basically, I don't believe in climate change. You shouldn't either. But now it's really, how do you get China in on this thing? Because it's just sort of, that's the mental block now. And so I think it is true that experience has taught us that, this is real.
Benji Backer, will you vote Republican at the next presidential election, even if the views of the presidential candidate for your party are sceptical at least about climate change?
Well, look, I'm 25 years old, and for the past 15 years, I've worked on Republican campaigns and for candidates and for the Republican push on the environment over the past kind of decade as well. I have not been able to, in my 7 years of being an adult voter, been able to vote for a Republican for president because of this exact reason. I will not vote for a Republican for president who does not believe in climate change or have a plan on it. I think all the candidates but Trump have an opportunity to do that. But I do believe that Republicans have to have a stance on this to win the youth vote. I don't think they deserve to have a youth vote if they don't have a stance on climate change that's productive and proactive and also about solutions. And so I won't be voting for a Republican if they can't do that. But I do believe that we're headed in the right direction very quickly on this. Will our presidential candidates listen and be a part of that positive solution, positive step forward? That's to be seen, and I sure hope it is.
I was talking there to Benji Backer from the American Conservation Coalition and also to former Republican Congressman Bob Inglis.